to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about hair loss, hair shedding, and hair thinning. When you're on the fertility journey, you may be experiencing hair loss. And while you are probably doing a lot of things to try to improve that, that can be a huge clue as to why you're struggling to conceive. Excited for you to listen to today's episode. We're getting to the underlying healing opportunity, really what's being missed with when you have hair loss and what that can mean for your fertility and restoring your fertility and restoring your hair. Excited for you to listen? Let's go. Hey, Julie, excited to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Let's share, if you could share about your work, really how you came to do this work, your journey.
Well, it actually started with a phone call. I was working as a senior media research analyst at Warner Brothers, and I got a call that my mother had stage 3 breast cancer. So and then she went into emergency surgery. So I decided to quit my job and move back to Denver. I worked in television there to support her through the ordeal, and got really more interested in why she got so sick, and realized I was putting blinders on my own health, and decided to quit and go back to school to study nutrition and functional medicine. But in that whole transition, I realized I was a hot mess, and the biggest complaint I had, like a lot of these women that come to see me, they've got a lot of other problems too, but their biggest complaint was the hair loss. So I consider that as a gift, because I probably would have just kept going with my fast-paced lifestyle and wouldn't have paid attention to things and slowed down if it wasn't for that hair loss. And then that's what I'm passionate about, teaching women worldwide how to, reboot their health, hope, and hair naturally, so they look and feel their absolute best.
I love it. I think, yeah, like when these things are happening, we're told our thyroid is normal, or we're told, and meanwhile, like your hair is coming out in clumps. Like I've been there. It's one of my things too, where I'm like, I used to have tons of hair, and now, like, struggling to, like, it goes through phases, but and I do all the things. So, so it is for someone that's on the fertility journey. Obviously, people that are listening to this podcast, they might have diminished ovarian reserve, premature ovarian insufficiency, low AMH or high FSH. They typically have been through, multiple failed IVFs, but told donor eggs are the only option. And then, oh, hey, by the way, my hair is either thinning or it's like falling out in chunks down the shower. And everyone's like, well, you just better rush off to, IVF, and maybe it's donor eggs. And there's nothing, this isn't a huge clue. And as you say, a gift, right? Obviously when you're going through it, doesn't feel like a gift. You're like, are you kidding me? What's happening? So let's talk about, so why would that, if someone is trying to conceive, why does hair loss is a signal? Why does that matter for them?
Because there's something out of balance. Well, we know they're having a hard time conceiving anyway, and some of the things you just mentioned, we know they're out of balance with. But I'm going to just say up front for your listeners that don't do what I did. I went from practitioner to practitioner, and they just dismissed me. And they said, well, the only thing you can do is be on lifelong medications or serums, or, do laser, or, and that is the worst thing for you to do now, because the type of hair loss you have is called telogen effluvium, and it will grow back. It's a stress-induced type of hair loss. And taking any of those medications is going to not be healthy for your baby at all. Even topical serums. It's even on the labels with all these. So I want to put that up front, that there are different types of hair loss, but this is not one to be concerned about. The ones that we need to be concerned about are the ones that there's scarring of the hair follicle. And you would know that because you'd have a shiny scalp, and it usually starts with coin size, like bald spots, size at the quarter, and then spreads. But I don't think any of your listeners have that. And let me just explain that a little bit further. So there's 3 main types of hair growth stages. So the anagen is the growing phase. Catagen is the regression phase. It can last anywhere from 10 days, whereas anagen phase can last 2 to 7 years. And then we have the telogen phase, which is a resting phase. So when you're having this hair loss right now, when you're trying to get pregnant and under a lot of stress, it's popping prematurely into the telogen phase, the resting phase. Okay. But that type of hair loss, again, it will grow back as long as you get everything else into balance. And I know you're working on that. So, you know, optimizing your diet, there's nutrients, you know, taking the prenatal vitamins and, you know, everything else you're teaching them there, Sarah.
Yeah, so
You know,
let's go into like what's normal, because I think we're like what's normal hair shedding, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the causes for this. Like, what are you seeing as normal?
yeah, so normal is about 100 hairs a day. That's normal. But when you have shedding of 150 plus hairs a day, week after week, month after month, that is abnormal. And that's when you need to address it.
Right. So if it's coming off in clumps in the brush and you're looking at the drain, the whole drain's filled
Yeah.
up. There's
Right. But I mean, a couple days of that, that's okay. But if it's going on week after week, month after month, that's not okay. That's not normal.
So let's talk about the hormonal imbalance. Like how is that associated with I guess shrinking hair follicles and hair loss and hair thinning? Like what are you seeing there?
Well, it's almost the same physiology as stress-induced hair loss because we have our, you know, our gut microbiome, but you also have this newly discovered hair scalp follicle microbiome. And it requires an enormous amount of energy, not only from nutrients that we're supposed to be absorbing. We might be eating them, but are we absorbing them? And if we're stressed out, not it's hard to absorb your nutrients. Okay, so number one, and then number two, the stress and the hormone imbalance that actually hormonal imbalance usually begins in your gut anyway, but that leads to inflammation of your scalp microbiome follicles, and that inflammation miniaturizes the hairs, and then they'll fall out, and then you throw in the scalp hair microbiome requires an enormous amount of energy, not only from those nutrients I just explained, but from ATP, our mitochondria. But unfortunately, our hair is not a vital organ. So all those nutrients and everything are going to go to our vital organs first. And our hair gets the last of the love. That's why, you know, our hair health is a real good indicator of our health. And that's why I say it's a gift, because, you know, if your hair is not healthy, and if it's falling out, there's something out of balance. And it's not a lack of Rogaine or, you know, laser therapy or PRP. Those are Band-Aids. That's not a root cause approach. And can I rattle off the over 50 causes of hair loss? And then
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
Categories. All right. So, and this will help you understand how hair loss, especially for women, is becoming really prevalent. And I'm attributing it to, along with hair loss researchers, the stress worldwide, chronic diseases, and the xenoestrogens that affect our hormonal balance. So we have nutrient deficiencies, nutrient surpluses, gut dysbiosis, imbalances in the gut, hormonal imbalances, elevated DHT, you know, autoimmune thyroid disease such as Graves, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, both, fungal imbalances like Candida, PCOS, diabetes, viruses such as COVID-19 cause a ton of hair loss, Epstein-Barr virus, I had that, anemia, iron deficiency, or even surplus. Your iron needs to be right in this particular range. Poor digestion or malabsorption, toxic overload, mold, xenoestrogens, medications, major unresolved stressors, trauma, PTSD, environmental toxins, gluten, anti-gliadin antibodies, and then of course autoimmune disorders. There's autoimmune alopecia that's attacking the hair follicle. Crash or liquid diets, parasites, chronic inflammation, adrenal fatigue, food sensitivities, intolerances, allergies, poor circulation, that's a big one, systemic lupus, syphilis, heavy exercise, or a sedentary lifestyle, infections, chronic illness, heavy metals, mood disorders, even depression, anxiety, and so forth play a role in there. skin disease, genetics, high fever, excessive hairstyling, mast cell activation syndrome. That's a big one. Circadian rhythm dysfunction, such as insomnia and other sleep disorders, EMF sensitivities or overload. And then I'm going to list off some of the top chemicals that can cause hair loss. So that's formaldehyde, parabens, phthalates, sulfates, silane, glyphosate, use pesticide, glyphosate. And then low protein intake. Our hair is made of protein that we need the branch chain and essential amino acids from the protein. Low intake of phytonutrients or fiber, undereating, eating disorders, parathyroidism. People don't usually think of that, but that is one. Cancer, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and then of course what we're talking about today, postpartum, after having a baby 2 to 3 months. And actually it happens to a lot of women. Like I read some studies, it happens to 90% of women a couple months after giving birth. It's just because our hormones are losing estrogen, they're losing a lot of hormones, especially if they're breastfeeding. I mean, they're just depleting their system. And again, our hair gets the last to love. So
Yeah, and a lot of those things that you mentioned there, a lot of them can be clues into why you can't conceive with the thyroid and the gluten sensitivity and the autoimmune issues and nutrient deficiencies, like all of this piece. As you start to nourish your body, lo and behold, the hair improves, and then you get pregnant. So it's not just in a little vacuum where, yeah, like you say, let's take Rogaine, and it's not connected. Like the body as a whole, and we in conventional medicine we do this in kind of silos. Let's talk about the thyroid. This is something that we see across the board with either autoimmune thyroid issues, hypothyroidism, subclinical thyroid issues, Hashis or Graves that we see with the autoimmune. And this has been missed in the adrenals and the thyroid that impacts, your follicle count, your egg quality, your AMH levels, all that's connected. So what are you seeing with people with the thyroid connection with hair? What's your take on that one?
yeah, I'm hypothyroid myself, and you just
Me
have to
too.
keep on top of it. It plays a huge role. I mean, our thyroid is our master metabolism center, and stress can play a huge role in unhealthy thyroid. But even, I mean, yeah, and they all work the same way. They just they cause that stress-induced type of hair loss, the telogen effluvium mostly. Where that you hear of androgenetic alopecia. That is more for men with the elevated DHT, but when women's hormones are off, they can often have elevated DHT. And that's why a lot of supplements contain 5A reductase inhibitors like pumpkin seed oil and so forth to help bring that down for hair growth. But even taking some of those medications to help manage our thyroid, all medications are going to deplete you of certain nutrients. So it's just it's a balancing act. And but back to the thyroid type of hair loss, it's a type that can grow back. It's not the scarring type, which is good news.
Okay, great. Yeah, and once you balance your thyroid, then
Yeah.
that also helps you get pregnant. So, yeah, exactly. What about nutrition deficiencies? So you talked about that. Like, which ones are you seeing as kind of the more common ones that are deficient?
Vitamin D is a huge one. It's needed. It's needed very much for hair growth, and then a lot of the B vitamins play a role. Even like niacin, the flushing niacin is. I don't know if someone's trying to conceive if that's a good idea, but it helps with circulation to the scalp. The flushing niacin, and biotin. Biotin. Sure, it's in everything, but there it's not needed for hair growth. It's just so your hair doesn't get weak and break, but it's not one of the hair growing nutrients, which drives me crazy because it's in everything.
Well, that seems
But
to be the popular one. They're like, make sure you're taking your biotin.
yeah, but the thing is, I won't even recommend one supplement on full script because they all have too much biotin, and too much biotin can mess up other systems in your body, and especially if you're trying to get pregnant. So I'm really selective about the hair supplements I recommend. Yeah, so you also need the essential fatty acids. Evening primrose oil is really nice because it also helps keep mast cell activation at bay. And then some of the ones I was talking about, even the fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, K, they're vitamin A, the 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 one you get from like meats, not the vitamin A conversion from like carrots. But the real true vitamin A is really, really great for hair growth. That's what you get from liver. And but liver is like a perfect food for hair health and probably for fertility too. Is
Right,
it?
exactly. I've done a podcast episode on like obviously
Yeah.
liver health, and then taking ingesting liver. Do you
Yeah.
recommend what's your go-tos for that then? Like as far as like eating liver, or you have like a supplement that you like, or
Yeah, I actually I have a spice. It's a
yeah,
chef yeah, James Chef. He has a spice made out of organ meats, and that's
yeah, what's that called?
pluck.
Plot. Yeah, right. Yeah, I've seen that. Oh, okay. Oh, that is good. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then what's the other one? Perfect supplements. They do an organ like a liver. So you could take that. Do you prefer more of a sprinkle, or or taking like the liver supplement?
I would test somebody first because you can give they can, the fat soluble vitamins, you don't want to get too much either.
Right.
So I prefer to test them to see their nutrient status before I start even giving them supplements.
True. True. Exactly. So do we. Um, okay. What about iron?
Yeah, iron's a big one. And again,
Right.
you need the heme iron that
Yeah.
you get from animal meats. And you want your iron, you need to have it checked, and you you need to have it above 70, but not above 130 is kind of a narrow range. You can get too much iron, it's going to cause hair loss, and too little will cause hair loss too. But I mean, if someone is low in iron, you have to ask why. Like I when I discovered I was a hot mess, I didn't know I had a gluten intolerance, and I wasn't absorbing anything, and I became anemic. Even though, I mean, people thought I had an eating disorder because I was eating so much, it was just going right through me. But I don't know. Some of these tests don't, like, some tests say I don't have a problem with it. So you have to also listen to your own body and eat whole foods.
Right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I was in Key Largo a while ago, and I went into a grocery store in there, I don't know, Winn-Dixie or whatever it was, and I looked in that store and I'm like, literally 90% of the store was processed garbage. Like you could have just had a stall with like some meat and some veg. That's all. The whole store. I'm like, what that like just insanity like of what's being promoted to people to eat. And you just really got to be mindful, right? Because they'll just suck you in. It's like shop the periphery of the grocery store and all this stuff that's enriched and fortified and all these labels. Like just don't.
Well, I
Um,
think that played a big role in my mother's cancer because
mm,
her mother, my grandmother, lived 104, and she was on no medications, and she only died because she stopped eating. She's like, I've had enough. But she cooked, and she cooked organ meats. She ate wild game, and she ate farm fresh food, and she ate fresh food, whole food.
right?
My mother was eating McDonald's and stressed out. And I mean, there's a lot to this, and some people think we're crazy, and you can't just live off supplements. You
No,
have to eat whole food. That's what we're made for. We're humans. We're not, you can't make up for your deficiencies in a bunch of supplements.
no, because then you're swapping off the pharmaceuticals for the whole supplement thing, and next thing you know, you
Exactly.
travel around with a. Now I do a number of supplements,
Amen.
but it is about
Amen.
eating the proper diet, and you can do because I don't do gluten, dairy, or corn. I'm like I can go down a whole gluten-free chip party with a dairy-free chocolate and a whole bunch of junk, and I'm like it is about filling yourself up with whole foods, and you just feel happier when you do. But who's perfect over here? Not me. Zinc. Anything you want to say there on
Oh,
zinc?
zinc is the big one. Now, zinc helps with regrowth of tissues and organs and so forth. It's a big one. That's a big one for hair growth. Definitely. Yep.
And then the B vitamins, we see people like we do genetic testing, and then we can look at your methylation pathways and see what kind
Yeah.
of additional support you
Methylating.
need, especially if someone's gone through pregnancy loss. But maybe you're like, obviously don't do folic acid, but making sure it's methylfolate. But maybe you need
Right.
additional B support or choline.
Right.
Anything. Yeah. So the B vitamins. What about the B12? Because we see B12 low on a lot of people. What do you see in
Yeah,
there?
yeah, that's a definitely needed for hair growth. And so are some of the nutrients you need for your thyroid health, like selenium, manganese. Now, manganese, if you're low on that, it can make your hair go fast, gray a lot faster.
Yeah, what's the take on that? So my mom, she started going gray, I guess, in her 30s. I probably was like, yeah, mid 30s as well. And so we got to dye this thing. I try to do the most non-toxic dye I can find, but it's still difficult. What's your take on someone that's dealing with gray hair? And then what's your take on like for dyeing? What's obviously someone on the fertility journey? What's your recommendation?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, you probably have you're not people that have premature grain, there's certain nutrients that are not absorbing well, or they have a genetic SNP that's causing that. Probably your case because you eat healthy. Um, and I am teamed up with a company that has anti-grain supplements and a serum, even though I'm not big on serums. But and we can give them a code at the end of this if they want to try that, because it might be the case with these women trying to get pregnant. They might just have some sort of genetic SNP that's causing these particular nutrients, and zinc is actually one of them,
Mhm.
that's not absorbing and um, processing correctly in the body, so that the gray is getting premature gray.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to have that
There's
recommendation
more
there.
chemical reactions than what I'm explaining, but that's the lowdown.
There you go. And what about and so for the oh my goodness, what was I gonna say? So the not the gray, the dye. What do you say for that? Where someone's like, "Oop, gotta be dyeing my," like what do you recommend?
Oh man, that one I've been researching, and I thought for a while it was a henna's, like a natural henna, but I
Yeah.
tried that and it trashed out my hair. Um, Makes no sense, but it did. Um, I know there's a salon here in Denver that uses a natural product. It's really expensive, but they cater to like people with Lyme and so forth. Um, and then Dr. Mark Hyman, hearing he's creating some sort of dye for hair that's
Is it? Oh.
non-toxic.
Because there's was it
Um,
hair print, which will help that they'll have you have to get their salon to have it, but they'll help with the gray. Oh, if Dr. Hyman's doing something, that'd be good.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, that's a late, now I heard, yeah, I haven't done a deep dive research on it, just because there's so many other things that I'm concerned about. And, someone wants to get the gray out, they're just gonna do what they do. So.
right. And then what about
Oh, but let me go back to that. Also, I mean, if you are gonna dye your hair, what have you, try to do a wash so it's not the permanent, because that if you do a wash, so it would wash out over time. That's less harsh. I mean, definitely harsh chemicals play a role in your hair health.
right.
Yeah.
And then the big one, which this is our whole thesis on all of this, is like the adrenals or stress is causing all these issues with your reproductive health and your hair. And so that's what you're saying that can be
Yeah, Sarah,
temporary.
so I put those over the 50 causes of hair loss into 4 functional root causes, and they probably overlap with your audience, what they're struggling with. So that's number one, not in a particular order: inflammatory,
Yeah.
digestive, which includes, nutrients and so forth. So inflammatory, digestive, hormonal, and stress induced. So those
Hmm.
4.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Um, and then anything else for we said and then what are your takes on for like a protocol for someone that comes to you and they've got issues with hair thinning or hair shedding, like where do you start and what does it look like?
Yeah. So I've trademarked my protocol to healthy hair fix, and I do the 5R approach, and that's in order: remove, replace, re-inoculate, repair, and rebalance. And I spend a good 3 months or more on the remove phase because they need to remove whatever toxins are stressing their GI tract, their body, even their environment, and maybe it has some stressful relationships. They need to get all that out and balanced before they start taking supplements but I also do a lot of functional labs, of course, depending on the person, and I'll look at any prior labs they have to determine if I need to do any more detective work to figure out what to remove.
You have
Because
any?
that's where I'm finding I get a lot of women that not only have been to a bazillion practitioners but they've been on Rogaine, they've been on spironolactone, they've been on these medications. One woman came to me, she was on what's that medication that men take on
Minoxidil? No.
no, for getting a hard on. What's it called?
Oh, erectile dysfunction. Oh, Viagra.
Yeah, and she
Oh,
thought she heard somewhere it would help with hair growth.
oh
I mean,
dear.
this is how desperate these women are. And Sarah, the hair industry is a
Right.
211 billion dollar industry. That's B with a billion.
Yeah.
And they are not regulated, so they can say this is clinical study, and it's not clinically. They just one ingredient was on something, and so they say, well, clinically, and you can. I mean, I spent hundreds of dollars on different products. They don't work. They don't work. It's not a lack of a certain shampoo that you're losing hair. It's not. It's not topical. I mean, that's why I only like a few serums out there. It's not. It's from the inside out. And stress has a lot to do with it because if you're stressed, you're not going to absorb your nutrients. You're going to get inflamed. You're going to have hormonal imbalances. So, the four functional categories I listed, there's overlap in there too. And you can't do one without the other. It's like a stool. You can't, yeah, but there's hope and I love it. I love the more complicated it is, then, do the detective work and, do the labs that others have missed and just get down there and figure out. And usually I figure out multiple imbalances, as you probably do with your women. That's why they
Mhm.
can't get pregnant.
Right.
And it's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's okay. It's
What
okay.
labs are what labs are you doing?
Oh wow, I do customized blood work. It depends on the client, but these are the main ones I like. I'll do customized blood work, hair mineral analysis, stool gut dysbiosis testing, hormonal testing, nutrient deficiency surplus testing, metabolic testing such as organic acids, inflammatory markers, genetics, food sensitivities, allergies, mold, other biotoxins, heavy metals, viruses, autoimmunity, yeast overgrowth, candida, SIBO, parathyroid, mast cell activation, and yeah. So yeah, it depends on
Yeah.
the person. So I
Not all
don't
at
have
once,
like a
but yeah.
cookie cutter approach, but I
Right.
do go through that framework,
Mhm.
and I'm really adamant about it because it's like building a house, right? You can't move in your furniture if the whole framework is not built in. Maybe say your house was destroyed in a hurricane, right? Like kind of like how I was before I started paying attention to my health. Like it was a hot mess. I had you name it, I probably had it. So, but that's like a house, right? And so you start building it up, you get the framework, but some people move in that furniture, like they start trying to repair the gut or start taking certain supplements before they've gone through the remove phase properly, before they've built that framework, right? So I think it's really important, at least in my experience and the way I do it, is to go through these steps and assessing along the way too, what's working, what's not. And even, I mean, I think food sensitivities and allergies play a big role because that causes some silent inflammation that people usually don't know they have. I come up with eggs a ton, like they they score so high of being sensitive to eggs, but when they eat eggs, they have no problem. So um, going on an elimination diet, that works too, but I find when people actually see the data and what they have an issue with, it just moves the needle more. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do the food diary, then we do elimination, and then we tweak it with food sensitivity testing because you can't
yeah.
you can do the testing and then be like, oh, I don't really know how it affects my body, or and vice versa. So it's like sometimes you got to
Yeah.
feel it and see it, right? Black and white. And then with the eggs, we see people intolerant to the whites, and then they're like, for pregnancy, we're choline. Oh, I'm taking all these eggs, and maybe that's causing a problem for you. Like you've got an intolerance to it. So it is to be able to see, what's right for you. What serum do you like for hair?
It's called Fully Vital. That's the company. And if you use Julie 15, if you go to Fully Vital, and the reason use Julie 15, you'll get 15% off for the listeners. Okay.
Nice.
You can go to my website and it's on there. But their serum has 4 peptides and caffeine. And caffeine can help stimulate the hair follicles, and the peptides are becoming big. And there's another one I like. It's called More Hair Naturally.
Mhm.
They also have a serum that's got peptides in it too. So those are the only 2 I like.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
there's a bazillion out there.
Right, there's lots out there.
And there's a code for that too. And it's on my website. I think it's Julie 10
Okay.
for discount codes for your listeners. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then anything other sort of the food. So you're taking those foods out. Any specific foods that you want to focus on, or any other like supplements or anything you wanted to bring in? Not that you're taking a boatload or anything, but like, was there any kind of go-to, like your strategy on the serum and like, I don't know, what is it like a typical protocol? Like we do the testing, we eliminate, we repair, we rebuild all that piece.
Yeah.
What does the end result look like typically?
Yeah. So I do have a 30-day and a 12-week food plan that takes out the common food allergens, takes out the nightshades. It's very anti-inflammatory, and that really, really helps. And I include the foods that are highest in hair growth, that have the highest. I'm really mindful of what foods are in there too.
Which ones are
And
good for hair growth? Just do you have the top of your head?
yeah, so I mean, the leafy greens,
Right.
right? Especially like arugula and salmon, cold water fish, olive oil, avocado, onions, pumpkin, nuts, especially like Brazil. Don't go crazy on, you only want 2 Brazil nuts.
Right. Yes. Yes. That's what I mean.
GABA actually is a good one. People don't think about that. Eggs, and again, but I take
GABA?
that in my food plan
What do
because
you
it's
mean?
a common food allergen.
Pardon me, just back up there. Did you say
Eh,
GABA?
GABA, yeah.
What's GABA? GABA.
GUAVA, it's a
Oh
fruit.
yeah, it's a little. Is that a fruit? Isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a reddish fruit.
Reddish fruit. I don't know if I've had a GABA.
Yeah, it's full of antioxidants. You
Oh,
need a
okay.
lot of antioxidants for your
Yeah.
hair.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, eggs is one of them, but I take it out of the food plan because it's just such a high inflammatory and sensitive food. Oysters, high in zinc, organ meats, of course, carrots, grass-fed beef, almonds, broccoli, sunflower seeds, bell pepper. But I take bell peppers out. They're
Nice.
nightshades, but I'm just for the general.
Yeah.
Cinnamon can really help stimulate. Bok choy, sweet potatoes, poultry, mushrooms, kefir, I would say non-dairy kefir.
Right.
So
Okay.
those are some of the top ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so those are the diet piece. But anything for this from a supplement side of things, or your regular, hey, after we do the testing, sort of these,
Yeah.
obviously you've got to work with a practitioner.
Testing.
We don't want to DIY this thing, but like
Yeah.
in general, what are some ones?
Yeah, so it's the supplements are, you want me to
Yeah,
brand?
sure. Like just to come, some of your top ones.
Yeah,
You see.
so I'm like two supplements out there. And again, they're not on full script. So Fully Vital, and the other one's Nervia.
How do you spell that?
I'll put it in the show notes. A Nervia, it's Ayurvedic,
Oh, okay.
and it's called Hair Radiance.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm also really careful. I used to be partnered with a big hair supplement company. You probably know they have commercials all over the place,
Okay.
but they got bought out by a huge company, and now they're created in China, and they have
Oh,
this
bummer.
mystery proprietary blend. I'm really super careful about this. It really is a pet peeve. It sounds like it is for you too, because so many women come in taking boatloads. So they're spending fortunes on
Oh,
supplements.
absolutely.
They don't even know why they're taking them, and they're not helping. And so I don't want to add fuel to the fire. And these supplement companies, I mean, supplements are supplements, but they're also not regulated. So that's why I'm just really careful about what supplements I recommend for hair growth. One of these days I'll create my own, but those are the two. We can put them in the show notes with the discount codes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, and now you have got a free guide here that they can find at fortitudefoundationalnutrition.com/roadmap hyphen to hyphen healthy hyphen hair. What can they expect in that free guide?
There's recipes.
Nice.
There's a quiz. You can figure out what type of functional hair loss you have. There's a
Okay.
quiz. There's a lot. There's 32 pages.
Very nice. Okay, so
Yeah.
definitely for them to go check that out.
Yeah.
And then you also have there's a 30-day healthy hair fix foundation program, and they can get that at healthyhairfix.com/foundations. And you have a coupon here for 50% off, and the code is HHF50. So healthy hair fix
Hair fix.
50.
Yeah. Healthy Hair Fix 50.
50.
HHF 50. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what can they
Both of those are on my website too. And you can get to my website by julieolson.com. That's a lot easier. And it's OLSON.com. Yeah.
what can they expect in the Healthy Hair Fix Foundation program?
Okay. So there's going to be 4 recorded modules about going deeper into than what we talked about today. And one is on hormones. And then, and there, you can do it your own pace. And there's over 17 guides and handouts and checklists. And then there's 4 weeks, 30 days of recipes, meal plans, and grocery shopping lists, 4 weeks of grocery shopping lists, and a lot more. It's a really good place to start just to get an overview and get your mindset before, you that might be enough for you. And if not, then you need to do some testing.
Great. Any
Yeah.
final thoughts for us today, Julie?
Yeah, don't lose hope. You got this. You can grow your hair back.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.